I'm talking with David Riddle. He's the president of Wing Aviation out of Houston, where he's been president since 2015. He manages and charters 28 aircraft. Most are Part 135, and one of them is Part 91. He is a graduate of Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University and a retired U.S. Air Force pilot. He was born and raised in Australia and came to the United States to go to Berkeley. He joined BizJet Jobs a few years before retiring from the Air Force and has been with us ever since. So Dave, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
We get a lot of phone calls from pilots who want to connect with you for job-related advice because you have insight at every level. You transitioned from the U.S. Air Force to corporate. You were a G5 captain. And then from management, you were director of operations to running an aviation company. You are now president. Can you talk a little bit about your story? What got you into being such a resource and helping pilots?
Well, when I was retiring from the military, I did 21 years. My last base was at Andrews Air Force Base there in Maryland. It was a little bit of a harder market to get into, and BizJet Jobs was a source that I was told about, that I needed to start getting on about a year prior to retirement and start looking where the jobs are. Because I really had no idea where to start looking as far as where I wanted to live, where the G5 positions are. I had a fairly decent idea. It would be West Coast, East Coast, but some of the resources that you showed on your website allow focus where I want to live, moving on into my civilian life. So, so about 6 months out, I got a job with another company, and I stayed with them for about 2 years. And realized there was not a whole lot of upward momentum. I figured I was going to be a co-captain, but always be under the shadow of the lead captain for at least the next 10 years. And being a military guy, and I don't mind doing that for a little while, but I also want to try and progress my career. So I started looking elsewhere, and ended up finding out about Wing Aviation. Actually found it on this website. I think you're advertising back in the day. And so I headed out here, and I got lucky to get a G5 captain position out here in Houston. And did for about a year, and still flying, but they asked me to move into the responsibility of our director of operations. And I did that for about a year, and then now president decided that he was going to and the owner of our company asked me if I wanted to take over that position as being the president. So I enjoy challenges, and I've been doing it for about 3 years now. Still fly to this day. Don't fly as much as I used to, but I still enjoy getting out there and seeing all the issues that the pilots complain that exist. And don't have a whole lot of sympathy for them because they're on the road having a good time. And I'm here pushing pencils and papers around. But that's a very, very short summary of my civilian career life.
What are some things a young pilot could start doing now if their goal is to, rise in the ranks like you did?
My background was very military, so I was able to get all my flight time and all my experience in the military. But Wing Aviation is about 42% of veterans right now. That's just not military pilots, but it's 42% veterans. So so I do have a large group of my guys that grew up in the ranks in the civilian world, and it's a hard life for them. They started out at making paying for their flying time, and then they started flying for free, and then they finally started making a little bit of money as instructors, and then they finally got that job. But right now, the way the market is, I know the NBAA just reported that there's going to be a 60,000 pilot shortage in about 3 years from now. So requirements are being reduced. We did the same thing here, where we're being a little bit more flexible on our minimum requirements in order to meet that demand. So what I would recommend for anybody to do is you got to get that magic number of 1,500 hours. A lot of the larger companies are looking for 2,500 hours before you get looked at as an SIC. But if you're a hard worker, you'll get those hours fairly rapidly. I know guys that do 600, 700, 800 hours a year, and So it's really a matter of just keeping your nose clean and getting those hours under your belt, because until you get to those numbers, a lot of companies won't look at you. And it's not because you don't have the experience. It's usually a lot because of the insurance requirements. With a fleet of 28, I've got a certain requirement of hours that I got to meet. And so don't get distraught. And if you're looking for jobs 6 months out, you're probably not going to get called. Most companies, I found this in my experience, that if you say, I'm going to get out of the military in a year from now, and you start putting resumes and you tell them you're going to be getting out a year from now, you're probably not going to get called unless you know somebody. A lot of these companies are reactive; they're not proactive, and it's the people that are getting out for the military guys. Is the people that are getting out in 60 days from now are the people that are getting the calls. I used to tell that to a lot of retirees when they get out and say, hey, I put my resumes out. I'm not getting any phone calls from anybody. And I said, well, what do you tell them your availability is? And they said, oh, it's a year from now. And I said, well, that's probably why you're not getting calls.
Along those lines, the 60,000 pilot shortage that you mentioned, what are the biggest opportunities right now in corporate aviation, or any trends or advice on just the state of the job market in general?
Well, there's two types of pilots, I believe. There's the pilot that wants to fly commercial, and there's the pilot that wants to fly charter. Through my military career, I found I enjoyed being in charge of an airplane and taking care of the customers directly and not having somebody else do that. That was what was challenging. That's what I really loved to do. Take a smaller airplane, briefing the customers, make sure everything they need is in the back, and working as a small crew, having the same pilots, having the same flight attendant, and just having that close relationship with our customers and our crew. And that's one of the things I like about the corporate world. And then there's the commercial aviation guy, where he wants to get on his airplane and he wants to go from A to B, and then go back to A, and then go back to B, and then go back to A, and pick up a paycheck, park his car at the employee. Obviously, I'm very swayed towards corporate. Park his car at the employee parking lot and pay $6 a day to do that, and come home. And I don't see that as a challenge. But so the corporate world to me is a much more adventurous, rewarding, and challenging career lifestyle. Plus the locations. My first trip here was to Turks and Caicos for 5 days. It wasn't to Midland and Amarillo and back to Midland. So I do enjoy that, but we are having to compete with the airlines right now. We have a little bit of a outgoing of some of our pilots, and they are all going to the airlines, and the airlines offer very, very competitive salaries now. About 7-8 years ago, they did not, but every single one of them has boosted their salaries and offering very sign-on bonuses. Be very wary of those sign-on bonuses, though. We had one of our guys who left, and he was back in our company inside of 3 weeks, because the sign-on bonus was not going to be paid to him until he'd been with the company for 2 years. They advertised that we're going to give you a 2-year sign-on bonus, and to everybody that would read that, would think they were getting that bonus when they signed on. But no, that 2-year bonus came at the end of their first 2 years. So be wary of some of the smaller airlines that are trying to promote you and recruit you. Just make sure you read the fine lines on those type of things if you choose to go to commercial.
Great tips, and I'm so happy that we got that insight from you. Wanted to specifically talk as well about Wing Aviation. We have so many pilots calling that want to talk to you, or emailing me saying, hey, I need some advice from Dave. Wouldn't it be even better to work for you? So I wanted you to give a plug for Wing Aviation and let us know if you have any openings right now that you are looking for good pilots for.
We're a company that's been around for 20 years. We are now the largest charter operator in Texas, and the FAA has actually decided that they're going to give us our own POI, PMI here probably by the end of the year. So we're growing. We continue to grow. We have 28 airplanes. I've got about 75 pilots, and we are on average about 3 pilots per aircraft. So the quality of life is there. We offer very attractive benefits program. You get 8 days off a month. If you're on a 3-person air crew, it's very nice. Our healthcare benefits are good. We offer, our owner is very generous, and we have an employee stock option plan, which is unheard of in a Part 135 management company. We have 401k. We have 2 weeks of vacation available the day you start. It's just a very good company to come work for. And we have some openings. We have a G200 captain opening. We have a legacy co-pilot opening. And we're always looking for pilots in our Hawker fleet, because we have 7 Hawkers now. And there's about 21 pilots on that fleet. And like I said, we obviously lose some pilots. Our retention is pretty good. For the past 3 years, we've had an 8% attrition rate, which is also a very good number. When you look at Part 135 management companies, they're normally in the range of about 35 to 40% of attrition. We're less than double digits. That's why we have a little bit of a flow out of our smaller aircraft, our Hawker fleet. But we ran some numbers in our last all-employee meeting, and 82% of our pilots that came and started in our Hawker are actually in the larger airplane. And that's the beauty of Wing Aviation. We don't have just 3 Hawkers and that's it. We have Hawkers, G200s, G4s, G5s. We're getting a G550. We've got legacies. So if you come here and you work hard for us for a couple of years, you'll find yourself in a large cabin airplane inside of probably 3 or 4. So there's a lot of career progression for our guys here.
Fantastic. Sounds like a lot of room to grow. So if pilots are interested in checking out Wing Aviation, where would you direct them?
They can go to your website, and then I think your website gives a direct link to our website also. But it's www.wingaviation.com, and there's a careers page there, and it's very simple. Careers page lists all their job openings. You click on those, and then and then just a little bit of entry, and we'll get the input from you via a software provider.
Thanks, Dave.
Okay.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.